everyone knows the story of The Ring. You get a VHS. I don't know why I can't say it. You get a VHS tape and it is played. Then your phone rings right after it is done. And there is someone on the other end of that phone call that whispers to you, 7 days. And then 7 days later, a long-haired girl crawls out of a flat TV screen and they scare the crap out of you. And it's a very iconic scene. It is a very shocking scene. When I first saw it, I was definitely shocked and scared about this creepy girl with long black hair, much like myself when I wake up early in the morning, staring out at you and just dripping in water with a white nightgown on. Creepy as. But if I told you that the original source, which is a Japanese novel that this movie is based on, is even more disturbing, will you be surprised or not? Yeah, so the book has so much more weirder details in there that adds this extra layer to the background of the tape and also makes the story, I think in my opinion, a lot more interesting because you get a lot more of the background of where the tape came from and who actually created it. And that's why we're here. We are going to be breaking down the absolute chaos of the original book, Ring, by Koji Suzuki, and I'm going to compare it to the 2002 American movie that maybe you and I had grew up on, being traumatized by, and maybe losing some sleep over. So let's get cozy, and we are about to start. For anyone, though, that may not have watched this horror film or know about the book and read about it, or even spoken to a friend that has watched the movie and didn't get a background of what it is all about, I'm going to just do a very quickest recap here to tell you the general gist and story of both the movie and the book. The story centers on a legendary cursed videotape that people are talking about, an urban legend at this point in time that unalives you after you watch it in exactly 7 days later. The story will follow a journalist whose niece suddenly passes away from really abnormal, mysterious circumstances, and she starts to investigate of what may have caused this death, and it leads her to a cabin or a mountain resort, depending on which source of information you are watching or reading. And in this resort that she goes to, very dank, very mysterious, she finds that there is a unlabeled videotape. And what do you do when you find an unlabeled videotape? Of course, you watch it. I, on the other hand, after watching this movie, will not be watching anything that is not labeled in the future. It does contain a series of abstract, disturbing images that means nothing to the watcher and also nothing to us, the audience. But as soon as the videotape stops, and it is done, the phone will ring and the caller will whisper, 7 days. Now, after watching this videotape, a lot of weird things happen. Also, a lot of unfortunate things happen, like your child watching the tape without you knowing, and now they are also cursed. So you are now not only desperate to save yourself, you are also needing to quickly solve this mystery to save your child from an untimely death in 7 days. The protagonist then recruits a cynical partner to help them decipher the bizarre images on the videotape. They trace the clues back to a girl with terrifying psychic powers who was unalived, unfortunately, by being thrown down a well. So that is the gist of the story, and we're about to now compare the similarities and differences versus video and book and why I think the book is a lot more better than the movie. We will start with who is actually here to solve the mystery. In the 2002 American movie, we follow Rachel Keller, a skeptical journalist racing against the clock to save herself and then her son who accidentally watched the videotape. But then in the book, our main character is not a lady, but is actually a man named Kazuyuki Asakawa. I'm going to call him Kaz from now on because I don't want to have to do this over and over again and for you to yell at me for butchering a Japanese name. Now, instead of this man being driven purely by maternal instincts, which he should because his little daughter and his wife ends up accidentally watching the videotape, he is also interested in solving this mystery because he's a reporter whose career has taken a massive hit. After chasing stories about UFOs and ghosts, people think he's a little bit of a laughingstock. and he is desperate for a scoop to help revitalize his career all over again. Both the novel and the movie are very consistent in the reasoning of why they start to investigate the mystery. In the novel, Kaz investigates the death of his niece, Tomoko, and in the American remake, Rachel investigates of her niece, Katie. Both of these nieces appear on the screen. They are the first sort of people that we get to see in the novel or on the screen. And even there is a Japanese movie. If you ever want me to compare the two there, you can ask me to as well. I'm happy to do it because I have watched that as well. But in both the American movie and the Japanese movie and in the book, the nieces are the first people that you will meet in this story. Now, the vibe of the story versus the book is also a little bit different. In the movie, it relies on sickly green colors palettes to visually put you at unease with very murky, sort of dreadful rainy days and a very somber mood throughout, trying to sort of obviously create that eerie atmosphere to help scare you a little bit easier. Whereas in contrast, the book, I don't think the book was there to scare you. It was there to make you be enticed by the mystery of it, because it reads more like a detective mystery book where the characters follow a paper trail, little clues here and there, doing scientific researches and interviewing even doctors to find out more about the backstory of the tape and also the person in it that might have created it. The film changed the genre from hard science fiction, I believe, to pure supernatural horror. But it does keep a lot of the specific plot beats, like the scavenging hunting clues, very much like the novel, but the atmosphere feels different. One is there with the intention to get you a little bit curious, get you to read on so that you'll reach to the end and read it in a fast pace, whereas the movie is there just to scare the crap out of you. Now let's talk about and compare the big bad in the movie and the novel, and more importantly, the backstory of how the actual videotape was created. In the movie, we have a young girl named Samara Morgan. She was a little girl with psychic abilities who is adopted by Richard Morgan and Anne Morgan, as they themselves were struggling with infertility. And as Richard points out later in the book, they were never meant to have a child, but they did adopt one and things went awry. It was clear from the very start when Samara was adopted that she was not quite right. She had this ability to project images not only into people's mind but to animals' mind, and they lived on a farm, which was not great for the animals there. She forced them to see disturbing visions, and essentially that ability allowed her to burn these images that she saw in her lifetime onto surfaces like a videotape. Hence the creation of it. She caused these intense psychological distresses to her adoptive mother, and unfortunately had rendered her mother a little bit insane. Once the mother had discovered that Samara was not quite right and that she was quite destructive for this world, she decided to save the world by pushing Samara down the well, and then she threw herself off a cliff after that. Now, the vengeful spirit attacks anyone who watches her videotape that she created from her abilities. And the reason why it takes 7 days for her to reappear to you is because after she was pushed down the well, she was still alive, and she basically had to endure these 7 agonizing days inside the well, where you did see once you got down there that there was claw marks on the sides of the wall and also nail that she left behind there as she was trying desperately to get out of the well, but unfortunately that never eventuated, and then she passed away in exactly 7 days. The person is unalived by Samara after the 7 days. What happens is on the TV that you are at or on a place where you can project images, an image will come up onto the screen. Even if you pull out the plug of the TV, the image will still appear no matter what, and it is an image of the well. So basically the well that Samara was pushed under, and it will keep flashing and flashing, and then you'll suddenly see someone climbing out of the well, which is what her obviously intention was in the first place when she was down there trying to get out. But in this video, she succeeds and she climbs out of the well, and the images of her gets closer and closer to you until she is right there face to face with you on the screen. Scary enough, but then she merges out of the screen and climbs towards the victim. The victim passes away from what they see. Their faces are locked in a scream or a twisted grimace, mouths open, unnaturally wide, and eyes bulging, pale and lifeless, much like how you would appear if you were drowning in water in a while. In the novel, however, the victims are said to have passed away from sudden cardiac arrest. The expressions are generally neutral and you can't really tell from surface level what they passed away from. However, they are found though, most of them with hands entangled either in their hair or crawling or gripping onto their scalp, which is an interesting and important detail to remember. Because this is why, as we go on to the backstory of this videotape. In the novel, the answer to the story is a little bit less supernatural and more science fiction. The antagonist is Sadako. Sadako wasn't pushed down a well by her mother. No, instead, she was essayed by a creepy doctor who was treating her father for a disease. So while she was at the hospital, this sick, disgusting doctor decided to take advantage of her. And this doctor was carrying the smallpox virus. And during the attack, Sadako's psychic energy called Nensa, or in English it's called photography, fused with this physical smallpox virus in her bloodstream. She was able to project that image and other images onto a videotape. And then the doctor then took her down to the well and tried to dispose of her body. Which is why I say the book is way more disturbing than a girl that was neglected by her adopted parents and then eventually unalive because she was causing distress her mother and people around her. So it was more like it made it sound like Samara was just pure evil and therefore she deserved to be sort of punished and gotten rid of. And then because she was evil and vengeful anyway, then it came out of this videotape. Whereas in the novel, I don't think our antagonist was evil at all or portrayed to be evil, except she was different and bad things happened to her and people took advantage of her, and then she became a vengeful ghost after the things that were done to her instead. You also find out in the novel that our main antagonist was born with both male and female genetic traits. This symbolized her being a break from natural order, is what the intention of the author is. It was said that this dual trait is tied to her unnatural psychic energy, making her more dangerous and even more powerful with her powers and less humanly explained, and is meant to make her more like an other, like an alien in the I think readers' eyes, as the narrative is that humans fear what they can't categorize, and because she was born with both traits, the world could not categorize her to be one or the other, and therefore always thought her as a little bit of an outcast, or pretty much an outcast in the book. Her being born with both male and female characteristics adds that layer of alienness, which is what the book is intending because it's a bit more sci-fi skewed, reinforcing the theme that she doesn't belong in the human world. Now, her power then created a paranormal conscious biological virus. Now, her rage-filled virus then was imprinted onto the magnetic tape of a videotape that was actually sitting at a nearby resort where the well is situated. So in the movie, you watch the tape and it summons a vengeful ghost in the end of the day. But in the book, watching the tape literally infects your body with this smallpox tumor, and it grows until it suffocates you in exactly 7 days. And the hand in the hair, like I mentioned earlier, represents the symptoms of the itchiness of the smallpox, which I thought was a very interesting and clever little detail that was added in there through all the victims that you see along the way. So Sadako never appears to the cursed people. She unalives her victims through a mechanism much like a virus that she got contracted because of what happened to her. And from within their body, they manifest this disease, and it's growing in there from the 7 days. So they're pretty much cursed from the very get-go. Now, there is an interesting and important detail in Koji Suzuki's novel that the movie mostly ignores, and it's that in each frame of the video that you watch, after each eerie scene, there is a black screen immediately after it. And it's not meant to be a stylistic choice. It's actually symbolic and functional. The black screen represents Sadako's blinking, which I thought was very cool and very interesting to mention. Her psychic energy is projected frame by frame onto the videotape based on what she's seeing. And of course, each black screen corresponds to the moment that she has to blink because her eyes became the camera that imprinted onto the magnetic tape. Therefore, it makes sense that there is a black screen after each scene because she, as the viewer or the camera, does have to blink in real life, and therefore that being appearing on the videotape makes a lot more sense. And I think if you added it into the movie, it would have added this extra layer of mystery and eeriness of why each scene then had this sudden dark bit and then it reappeared again as another scene. And I think it was something that would have been really much more interesting if it was added into the movie, and I wish it was. Thinking of the blinking like this, her consciousness is embedded in the video and the black frames are the gapes in her vision, her blinking. For the novel, I think it is a way to humanize her. Even in death, the blinking reminds the reader that she was once a living creature and she suffered these sort of situations which is now projected onto the videotape. Not only is she watching you after you watch the tape, but you are also almost becoming her and seeing the world from her perspective. Hence you are like behind her eyes watching everything she sees with the blink. Now, finally, let's talk about the cure and the ending of both the movie versus the novel. The ending, I would say, is one of the biggest structural similarities in both the book and the movie. The climax does trick the audience into a false sense of safety because the protagonist finds the well beneath the floorboards of the cabin. Both the protagonist and their sidekick climb down into the murky water, into the well, and pull out and find the skeleton remains of the girl. Sadako in the book, Samara in the movie. They haul the corpse and comforting the corpse even, believing that giving this girl a proper burial and comforting her spirit will break the curse of a vengeful ghost. Like in many American movies, I would say, the way to free yourself from a vengeful ghost is to help them sort of fulfill their final message or final task that they wanted to do, and then they can move their spirits on quietly and safely. But generally, if you know Japanese movies, Japanese vengeful ghosts don't have that vibe. Their vibe is just to inflict revenge on and on until the end of time. After they found the well, after they do the whole burial thing, they think, ha ha ha, we are now safe. The protagonist and the psychic go their separate ways and they go home thinking they're safe and they can now continue on with their lovely lives. Only the psychic, Noah in the movie, Ruji in the novel, will be taken by the curse in their final moments. They watch the tape after the protagonist is okay, but they are not. Now, why? But that the protagonist is okay because both of them made a copy of the video and showed it to another person, which is their psychic. Because the book is implying that the videotapes is actually like a virus, the ending makes so much more sense in the book than compared to the movie, I would say. In the movie, we're left with this creepy, vague realization of, oh, if we just have to keep showing it to people to stay alive and make a copy. But why would a vengeful ghost leave you in an escape sort of route? It doesn't logically make sense. As I said, in most Japanese movies where there's a vengeful ghost, say for example, The Grudge, the ghost never ever lets up. Even if you realize their story and you discover it, they don't care anymore because their spirit wants one thing, and it is revenge, and it will always want revenge. So it will never really give you an out, in my opinion. But in the book, it makes a little bit more sense. Terrifying that the answer is this, but it does make more sense because at the end of the day, the video is not about a vengeful ghost. The video is about a virus, because once Sadako passes away and she projects her sort of psychic ability and her disease mixed together onto the videotape, this now videotape has become a biological weapon, I would say. And its goal is to replicate and spread, because that's what viruses are intended to do. The tape wants you to duplicate it, to make a copy and pass it on. And you are acting as the host, spreading the infection to new victims every time. You didn't beat a ghost, you just helped the intention of the virus, which is a plague, to go viral. And because you fulfilled it, it broke the curse for you. So which is better? I would say for me, the book is a lot more better. Again, like I said earlier, the ending makes a lot more sense, this whole videotape being a virus rather than a vengeful ghost trying to get revenge. Because if the vengeful ghost generally wants to get you to fulfill her need of sharing her story, then she would just let you share her story. But the videotape actually doesn't share her story. It just creates eerie messages that doesn't mean anything to anyone if you're watching it. So it doesn't kind of make sense that she wants you to pass on her videos, because it doesn't help you share what happened to her. Whereas in the book, the only intention is she doesn't need you to know her story. She just wants you to share the virus now, because she ultimately became one and she projected it onto a videotape and now fulfill her destiny. Otherwise, 7 days, you're gone. But if you want the cure, the antidote for your disease, then do as I say. So for those reasons and all those little nuances that I mentioned, where the blinking of the the blinks between the videotapes, and also you get to know a lot more backstory about Sadako, the antagonist, whereas Samara, all you get to find out is she's a girl with powers and neglectful parents that didn't know what to do with her, and so they just got rid of her and now she's angry. Whereas the book has a lot more layering of her backstory of how she was like shunned by society for being different, and then and then the vengefulness and the angriness that built up over time because of what happened of being neglected and being sort of shunned, and then also now being taken advantage of by the doctor that she trusted, adds more to the fuel of why she would want to spread this along. But I get it. The novel has a lot more time to flesh out all these details and backstories and any of the nuances, where the movie must ignore it because it's trying to fit it into a 1.5 story. And so a jump scare sometimes is a bit more entertaining than trying to explain the reasoning of the creation of the video. But let me know, did you know The Ring was actually a sci-fi book about smallpox? And who would you rather face, a creepy TV ghost or maybe a psychic biological super plague? I don't know. I think probably the super plague, because I feel like with plagues there eventually is a cure. With a creepy TV ghost, it is forever. They will be chasing after you. Now, if you like these types of videos where it's comparing maybe movies and TV adaptations to novels, please let me know, and which ones you want me to cover in the comments below. If you enjoyed yourself today, don't forget to like and subscribe before your and my 7 days are up. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.